Phone, nice to see you. Oh,
Hello.
yeah, yeah, Charlesley, yeah, good to see you. uh, Grace, oh my goodness, from South Africa, good to see you. Wonderful. It's great. Yeah. So wait, and Martin, good to see you. Yeah, yeah. All right.
Shall I open it up, George? Or should we
Yeah.
wait a little bit?
Yeah. So you mean open it to everybody?
No. I mean, share the opening.
Why don't you? Let's go.
Let's go. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. So we are so excited to have you here for the sixth mindful engagement session of 2020. My name is Laura Woodward, and along with Natalie Benetti, we will be coordinating today's session. Our teachers, Hugh Byrne, Kyra Jewel-Lingo, and George Kinder, designed this series to offer support to everyone who is concerned with the state of our world and seeks to engage in it mindfully. George will be leading this month's session with Hugh Byrne. Kyra Jewel-Lingo is on retreat this month and unable to attend the session, but she will be hosting the next session in August. George Kinder is a meditation teacher, an author, and a thought leader on life planning, mindfulness, and a golden civilization. The title of today's session is The Factors of Enlightenment and Golden Civilization Conversations. This session will begin with a brief welcome that introduces George's poem, The 7 Factors of Enlightenment, followed by a guided meditation and a facilitated group discussion that includes breakout sessions around making commitments toward a golden civilization. We'll finish with some closing remarks and a preview of the upcoming sessions. These sessions are offered in the spirit of generosity, and everyone is welcome to participate. For those who can, we invite you to offer a donation to support the teachers and the ongoing programs. Links to give via Venmo and PayPal will be shared in the chat. Donations are equally shared among the teachers. To help us build community, we encourage you to use the video throughout the session, and please rename yourself with your preferred pronouns and where you are joining us from. So for example, it will be Laura Woodward, she, her, from Pepperell, Massachusetts. These sessions are being recorded and will be shared with all that are registered for today's session, which we had about 50 people register, as well as the other groups who have been part of these sessions in the past. To keep outside noise to a minimum, we do ask you to put your microphone on mute until you're called upon to share. When you do share, please do so mindfully and practicing respect and empathy. We encourage you to use the group chat throughout the discussion so that you can share your excitement, your concerns, your gratitude, inspiration, and ask questions. We had folks register from 10 different countries, and we're excited to welcome each of you here. So with that, I turn it over to George Kinder to start the session.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. And I'm going to add one thing to the agenda, just so you're not taken by surprise with this. In the frame of the golden civilization, there's so much concern right now, and not just in America, but all over the world, about the election that we're just 100 days away from. So I'm going to bring some of that focus as we focus on the golden civilization toward that. And we also have special thoughts. We know that that the election is a concern all over the world, so we also have a frame that we're going to be sharing for people, for those of you who are signing in from other parts of the world. We're so excited to have all of you here. I wanted to start with a poem that before we go to the PowerPoint of it, I've got a PowerPoint that shares it. I wanted to give you a frame for it. I don't know, how many of you, can you raise your hand if you've heard of the 7 Factors of Enlightenment? If anyone has heard of it, so we've got just really a few people. It's taught, it was one of the original, one of the early Buddha's teachings about the 7 Factors of Enlightenment. And when it's taught in Buddhism, it can be confusing for people. So earlier this year, I had an insight about how it works coming out of a basic mindfulness practice. So I wrote a poem about it, and I'm going to share it. And hopefully it will be an inspiration to then the mindfulness practice that I'm going to be leading. So Natalie, why don't you share the slide that is the 7 Factors of Enlightenment. And we'll see whether I read it from the screen or I read it from the paper that I have here. So you'll recognize many of these factors as being elements of a mindfulness practice. What I've done in this slide, if you can share it, just the current slide, yeah. What I've done with this slide is this poem is I've teamed it with a photograph from the pond that I lived on. It's a panorama, so it looks much more dramatic than perhaps it does in reality. Natalie, can you get it just to a single slide? There we go. Okay, great. There's one line below, my screen stops with closely. Let's see if I can stop that. But there's one line below that, and we'll translate it. You can all have versions of this afterwards. In the poem, if you're reading it along with me, the words that are highlighted or italicized are the 7 factors of enlightenment. So here's how the poem goes, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Today, it is so obvious. I have to tell you about awakening. It's all in the moment, in anicca, in impermanence. If you watch each moment closely, that's mindfulness and concentration. I mean, if you keep returning, noticing momentarily, investigating, why just now you wandered. But you keep coming back, and that thrill of existence and freedom that you feel is nothing but rapture or happiness or joy, filled with enormous energy. There is nothing in the world more powerful than the shift of one moment to the next. And now you've completely forgotten yourself, finding tranquility in its stead and complete equanimity, whether this moment or the last or the next. It is said that when the 7 factors of enlightenment are in balance, the most powerful moments of transformation are possible. Don't wait. What is there to wait for? It's all in the moment. It's all in the weather we experience every day. Watch each moment closely. That is all that you are meant to do. So let's come back to the group setting again, and we'll have that as a resource for you. The practice that I lead, the way that I teach mindfulness, is a very simple practice of just paying attention to sensations in the body and in the breath. So I'm going to lead you through that. We'll do about a 15-minute meditation here, and then come back to the engagement side of this conversation. So find a posture where you feel comfortable, the body at ease, the back relatively erect. And again, we'll be working with the first 3 of these factors of enlightenment, with mindfulness, with concentration, and with investigating. How is it that we just wandered away? And how is it that we've just come back? So starting with feeling the sensations of just being in a body before you even go to the breath, which is our main area of focus. So feel what it's like, these sensations that have been rising for you since, oh gosh, since you were in your mama's womb, way back. Feel sensation by sensation, how they inform you now, how they tell you that you're here. So it doesn't matter what thoughts come up. As soon as you notice a thought, just come back to feeling this cloak of body that we wear all our lives. And as you relax into these sensations of the body, these feelings of just being here, at some point you'll notice the feelings of the breath, and very likely you'll relax. And when you relax and feel the breath, shift your focus, narrow your focus to the sensations of breathing, either at the belly or at the nostrils. Whichever is your common area of focus, or wherever you feel the sensations to be predominant. At first, just resting in the rhythm of the breath. Just relaxing into its twofold movement. Whenever a thought arises, as soon as you notice that you're thinking, call yourself back. See if you can return to the breath directly and without judgment. And then as you watch the breath either at the belly or at the nostrils, you can sharpen your focus again by narrowing the focus to the individual sensations that you feel. Again, at the nostrils or at the belly. So feeling the very first sensations of the breath, do you feel it as a sudden sense of movement within the nostrils or at the belly? Do you feel it as a temperature, a sense of warmth or coolness? You feel just the feeling quality of the breath. Is it smooth or is it rough for you? Is it um, hard or is it soft? Is it tight or is it at ease? Feeling as well, not imagining with your mind, but feeling the shape of the breath as it unfolds in your nostrils or at your belly. So feeling if the breath just feels like these little points of sensation, vibrating perhaps, or pulsing in and out. Or is it, do you feel it as a line, as linear, or as a surface, like the surface of the belly or the surface of the nostril? Or when you feel the breath, do you feel it as something three-dimensional? And as you feel the surface or the three-dimensionality of the breath, if that's there, does the shape have a boundary to it? Or are the edges diffuse for you? So feeling these momentary, moment by moment sensations coming alive in the middle of the breath. And whenever a thought arises, not following it one thought further, but coming back directly and without judgment to the breath. Again, if the mind wanders, noticing just momentarily how you got pulled away. Was it from a desire or an attachment to something, a longing? Was it from a moment of boredom or sleepiness? And as soon as you notice that you've wandered, bring the mind back. Without judgment, gently. So we're going to sit for a few minutes just in silence doing this practice. Very simple. Whenever a thought arises, you let it go and come back. And as you feel the breath, you attempt to really live in the midst of the breath. Feel it as if you were inside it, so present to it. And bringing forgiveness to yourself for each moment that you miss, each wandering that happens. Always returning when you find the mind has wandered. Coming back to the breath, feeling the in-breath and the out-breath. So noticing as we come toward the end of the meditation, as you continue to follow the breath and feel the sensations of the breath and continue to let your thoughts go, noticing which of these factors of enlightenment you might have experienced. So as you return to each moment of the breath, that simple returning is an act of mindfulness, coming back to the same place of focus at the nostrils or the belly is concentration. Noticing when the mind wanders, how you fell away from the practice, often through a sense of attachment or a sense of lethargy or aversion, is part of what is called investigation. If you found, as some of us find, and consistent practice will deliver this, if you found energy, if you found alertness as you gathered your practice, that's again another factor of awakening. And if you found any sense of happiness in all of this, it's what the Buddha called rapture or joy. And you might also notice most of us feel at the end of meditation, we feel a stillness inside of ourselves. Again, the Buddha called this tranquility. Again, another factor of awakening. And the final of the seven is this sense of it doesn't matter whether it's the last moment or this moment or the next moment, a sense of equanimity in regard to life's experiences. And it's said when all of these things are in balance, which come really just from the simple practice of mindfulness, arise from this practice, that greater and greater possibilities of awakening for each of us arise, emerge. So now as you begin to open your eyes and come back, the wonderful thing, the thing that Hugh and I are passionate about is how these qualities of enlightenment or awakening, but also the qualities of kindness or generosity of spirit, really all of the virtues, what in Buddhism, some of them are called Brahma-viharis, but how all of these things are useful for us as we engage in worlds that feel very problematic with tension and disagreement and polarity. So we'll be talking a little bit about this, you and I, but I want to bring you, so the Buddhist teaching was primarily in two realms. One was about meditation, and the other was how do you engage in the world? And when he talked about how you engage in the world, his basic talk was about right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And so as we engage, as we do mindful engagement around a time that's terribly polarized, not just in America, but all over the world, terribly fraught. One of the questions is, can we bring these qualities, these virtues, into our engagement so that we're having as much influence because of who we are? I think of it as our authenticity, really. That's my word for it a lot. Back in the Zen days, they called it your true self or yourself before you were born. Different words for it. But can we bring these qualities into our engagement so that we're just as vigorous to make a difference in the world, but we bring the qualities of awakening in there as well? One of the things that I think of for those of you that have studied Buddhism and all is this term right livelihood is usually talked about in terms of our engagement in work. But democracy was not part of the picture when the Buddha taught. And I think as we came to democracy and developed democracy, what happened was that part of our livelihood had to do with our engagement with each other in this civilized way that we call democracy. And so right livelihood requires, in a way, us to engage. This is, I think, the beauty of what, and I don't want to speak for you, but it's certainly, I think it's what you and I feel, the beauty of this intermingling of these two traditions, is that right livelihood requires us to be engaged. Otherwise, we're participating in violence, we're participating in war, or we're participating in hypocrisy, because we're part of that community now, not just by our vote, but because we're democratic citizens. So it's a wonderful thing. And those of you who were here a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I led there's a conversation that I've been leading all over the world called a Golden Civilization Conversation. And I'm going to share just a little bit about it, and then we're going to do breakouts where we're going to talk about how we move forward in the world in the next few months. The conversation has 3 flip charts. Laura and I train people, and Natalie and several of you are on this call. We train people to deliver Golden Civilization Conversations now all over the world. And we encourage it as a participative democratic process. And what it does is it visions the world we want to live in. And that's called the Golden Civilization. And then we look at the obstacles. And so we have this big, brilliant golden light of the Golden Civilization. Then we have the obstacles. Then we look at the actions that could deliver us into that world. And now we're talking about right action and right speech and right livelihood. And we close with commitments. So we're going to focus a lot on commitments right now, because we've got 3 vulnerable, fragile months and fraught months where we want to be as full with the best of ourselves as we possibly can be, and to make the best difference we can make in what may be the most consequential election that America's ever had. So we're going to bring a bit of focus to that question of how do we want to be? And it may be that we want nothing to do with the election. We just want to be a good person, and that's fine too. So this is about the Golden Civilization. It's not just about the election, but I wanted to bring that up because it's on so many of our minds. So Natalie, let's go to the slides that show the Golden Civilization flip charts. And again, we have resources that can train you how to lead a conversation in these. I led a conversation with Hugh and Kyra Jewel a few months ago, and it was very exciting. So here's the flip charts. You can see the vision of the Golden Civilization, and then you have the obstacles there. And here we look at the inner obstacles as well as the outer. And what's really interesting from a mindfulness standpoint is the inner obstacles often will dominate the obstacles, even though always politics, corruption, money, power, corporate power will come into the outer obstacles. But inner obstacles always greed, anger, fear, and prejudice of all kinds. Racism huge in this. In the inner obstacles. So everybody, and this is, we've done this on 5 or 6 continents all over the world. People know that it's the inner obstacles as much as the outer that are really critical for our work here. And then we close the conversation. It's typically an hour and a half, and we do 30 minutes for each. I think we did just 25 minutes here. And we close with actions that would deliver a golden civilization or would solve the obstacles. And then the actual close is of those actions, what are we willing to commit to? And the reason that we do that piece of commitments is that that's something that's inspiring for people. So, so Natalie, let's go to the vision chart with all the writing in it just for a moment, just to show everybody. And I'm just going to pause here for a minute, just for give you a chance to scan this particular flip chart. So there it is, a golden civilization. This is what this group came up with. in just a few minutes, really. Everybody chatting it in, and wonderful to engage with everybody around this. And you won't have a chance to read every word here, but you can see the inspiring things. Clearly, what we want in this world is this and many other things. Usually, democracy and its freedoms come up here. You can see echoes of it here, but not the specific name democracy. But we're going to talk about that in a moment. So this is the vision. And the purpose of Golden Civilization Conversations is to keep coming back to the vision and make it happen. So the second meeting, the second flip chart, let's go to that, Natalie. That second flip chart is about the obstacles. And here you'll see fear and greed right there, racism right there. Those are the big ones, really, that come up inside. All forms of prejudice, really, all the isms. And in the outer, you'll see concerns about with capitalism, with current governing bodies, banking, climate change, of course, poverty, all the external things that get in the way, hunger, disinformation, problems with media. So we have all of these obstacles. And in ongoing meetings, we come back and we go at these obstacles and we go at the qualities of the Golden Civilization that we want to deliver as a group. So the group may be 6 people, it may be 100 people. But the group gathers together and begins to form subgroups. So there may be 3, 4, 5 themes within a group that keep returning. So one of the themes that's returning a lot right now in groups is democracy and politics, and particularly in America, but we see it all over the world. So let's go to the next chart, Natalie, which is the chart that shows what we put down last time in terms of action steps and commitments. And again, I'm just going to give you a minute or two to glance at these, and you'll see that the actions and the commitments are inspiring. The commitments, you can feel the personal note of them. Walk the walk, take the time, add one new step each week, each day, write lawmakers, create a farmer's market, meditate more, protect our earth. These are personal commitments that people have made. So Natalie, let's come back to the whole group. And again, we're happy to share those charts with all of you as a resource. What I'd like to do is, I want to tell you what my commitments are going to be, but I also want to frame breakout sessions. Now, maybe I'll frame the breakout sessions after I toss the ball to Hugh. And so I'm gonna share so we're gonna be looking at going through this next 3 months. What are our commitments over the next 30 days till we come back and join together again? What's our commitment over the next 100 days between now and the election? And again, you don't have to be focused on the election. It could be anything about a golden civilization that you want to help deliver. And then the third question is, how might you bring mindfulness into these engagements, into these commitments? And for now, I'm just going to share what my 3 commitments are going to be. And we'll come back to these other questions in our discussion altogether. So I commit over the next 3 months, really, and Laura and Natalie, I know, will be holding me to this. I commit to do as many golden civilization conversations as my body will allow me to do, as my health will allow me to do over the next 3 months, and as opportunities present. So that's commitment number 1. Number 2, I commit to share on every platform and in every engagement that I make with people, resources to engage around particularly for the American community, resources to engage the American community to make a difference 100 days from now. So number one, I'll hold Golden Civilization conversations. Number two, I'll share resources everywhere and search them out. So let me know. One of the reasons I'm excited about this group is I think you're going to tell me some new resources that we can add to our list. And then the third thing I want to share is that one of the things I've been working on professionally and with my life planning Golden Civilization group is something called a fiduciary standard. And we've come up with something that I think in a single sentence, if it were applied to the law for all corporations, nonprofits, government entities, for all organizations, that it would make a huge difference and might even solve all of the major problems in the world, including climate change, racism, money in politics, corruption, all of those things, by making a single change in the law to all organizational structures. And something that I call a fiduciary standard, echoing something that is talked about a lot in financial services sector. So those are my three commitments. And that said, I'm going to toss the ball to Hugh to give us, because I just want to say something incredible. I feel so lucky to be engaged with Hugh. And partly because when I first met him, I knew immediately that I wanted to be engaged, because he had both the depth of practice, we both shared that, and a passionate commitment to make the world a better place, an engaged commitment. So so the question that I'm tossing to Hugh, because he's out there and he's in the Washington area, is, what have you been doing? What are your commitments to do over the next 3 months? And how will you interweave mindfulness with all of that?
Beautiful. Thank you, George. I'm so happy that we're doing this today, and we're focusing on the commitments. I think it's so important, and I'm going to try to be, I will be as brief as I can be. The first thing I come back to and start from is the understanding and the experience that the more I'm grounded in presence, in awareness, in the qualities that George led us in the meditation of equanimity and concentration and mindfulness and these skillful practices, the more I walk my talk, that I do my practice, the more I naturally see and come to understand that it's not about me or waking up alone or finding a bit of calm or peace. It's really about all of us waking up together. It's a natural outgrowth of my practice and our practice that we see our interconnectedness with each other. Just as the Buddha, when the Buddha awakened, what did he do? He went out and he taught for 45 years, people from all walks of life. He didn't say, oh, I'm just going to sit on this mountain or whatever and kind of live in bliss or whatever. But he cared deeply about the suffering of the world. And I think this naturally arises out of our practice. And this is really what we've been focusing on these last 6 months, and will be for the remainder of our time, of what is wise action? What is appropriate action? What is compassionate action? And this, I think, naturally arises. What is an appropriate response? And focusing here in the United States, we were in the middle of the pandemic. We got the uprising for racial justice and to deal with the oppression and the exclusion and everything that, talked the society in a contorted direction, really, through racism over 4 centuries. How do we find a way out of that? And one thing that I think we'll all agree, I hope, that is key, is to elect a caring and compassionate government. That is, everything else is essential, but if we don't do that, then our chance of engaging, with climate change, racial justice, or any of the other essential, the economic inequalities, is just, it won't happen, because we're already seeing the movement towards, undermining, every day the rule of law and democracy. And this election, if it went the other way, I would say, the world, not just the United States, is in a very, very, tenuous and scary place. And I don't want to kind of over speculate, but that's kind of what I'm feeling. So I think for me, I want to do everything I possibly can. And being like George and Kyra Jewel, being in a position of, affecting others through our teaching and our work, I want to first of all use that platform, that as to kind of link, to do what we're doing here, to link the inner and the outer, to say, to point to the ways in which our own practice makes a huge difference in how we engage in the world. Because if we're not aware and we're not present, we're going to engage in the world from the standpoint of clinging and attachment. And so we're going to make it into, we're good, we're right, they're bad, they're wrong. And however right we are, and however we might feel we're on the right team, as it were, we're going to just reproduce their suffering. We're going to reproduce division and conflict and hatred and separation and alienation, which is the core of suffering. So what we can do, and what I'm committed to do, is to engage in a way that seeks to bring us together, to recognize that at the end of the day, we are one people, we are one world. And so that to keep my teaching focused on that, over the next 98, 99 days until the election, and afterwards as well, to ensure that so that the people's will is given effect to, and so doing everything to ensure that people have the right to vote and exercise that right to vote. I've been involved with a campaign focused on the very pivotal state of Wisconsin. We've been making an effort around that state, because it's has been at the cutting edge in all of the recent elections, over the last 10, 20 years. So we organized a webinar with Tara Brach, Jack Cornfield, Van Jones, the political commentator. We can make that available if you haven't seen that. They're very, very powerful. We raised in one evening $215,000 to fund grassroots organizing in that state, people who live in their communities and are talking to their neighbors. So those are the efforts that I'm really going to be focusing on in my teaching, in groups, this group and in a similar group that we have in the DC area. One of the things as well, so those are commitments of mine to keep doing that. And just on a personal level, I believe it's very effective to reach out to people individually and to get them to vote, particularly people who might not, who are the on that edge of they're less likely to vote. So there's some great campaigns going on to send postcards, to send letters to those voters in all of the, particularly in the swing states. I'm doing this through Vote Forward, but it's happening through other organizations as well. And it basically, they send you a form letter, but you fill it in and it's all handwritten, so that somebody's getting a handwritten letter saying, this is the reason I'm voting in the election and voting in every election. Please exercise your democratic right, and because we need your voice in there. And getting that in a handwritten envelope and a handwritten letter to do that, I think is really important. I'm going to commit to doing 20 of those letters every month, until every week until the election. So that's like whatever, how many, 14 weeks. So hopefully I'll send 280 of those letters. And, so I encourage that. There's many great initiatives out there. I went over my time by a minute or two, but that just gives a flavor of what I'm working on. And And back to you, George. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Inspiring, Hugh. Inspiring. Very helpful. I know Kathy, my wife, Kathy Lubar, on the show here today. She also is letter writing, and yeah, it's inspiring for me to see her, watch her do it. But Jack and Tara's have a site, and we're going to share their site with you because there's a lot of resources on their site. And I think we can put these resources as well on the Mindful Engagement site as well. So what we'd like to do is go into breakout sessions and then come back and talk with you all and hear what your thoughts are. What we'd like in the breakout, we're going to have somewhere between, I think, 16 and 20 minutes. I think it's probably going to be closer to 16 minutes. So roughly 3 to 4 minutes of talk per person. We'll have 3 to 4 people in each group. If you're not from the States, and I can see a number of you are from another country, we'd love to have you in our breakouts. We'd love to hear from you because we need your support as well. But if you'd like to be in a separate group that is just for people from other countries to think together about what they want to do around the golden civilization or around the election, if you want a separate international group, please raise your hand so that I know that that's what you would like. And otherwise, we'll intermingle you with others with people from America. Okay, cool. Looks like we're all going to be in an intermingling of chats. So before you break us up, Natalie, there's a few questions. So I want someone in the group to take on the role of kind of taskmaster, of making sure of host. And what I'd like you to do is make sure everybody answers these 3 questions. What's your commitment between now and a month from now when we'll gather together again? And so what are you going to do over the next month? Number 2, what are you going to do over the next 3 months? And number 3, how will you intermingle qualities of mindfulness into the work that you're doing? And this question does not have to be about America's democracy and the politics of an election. For many of you, maybe for most of you, it will be, but it could be about just the golden civilization itself. How do we bring that into being? So I look forward, I'll be in a chat with a group of you. I'm really looking forward to it. We'll come back in roughly 16 minutes. Natalie's setting us all up. It looks like just about everybody returned, which is great. We had a wonderful group, wonderful sharing, and from 4 totally different places and points of view, really inspiring to hear. Some of it very personal, some of it very creative, some of it right to action. I would love to hear, we've got, 15, 20 minutes now. I would love to hear from anyone who would like to share. You could share for your group, from your group, just as an individual member of the group. I don't want you to share anything personal from someone else, but would love to have something that inspired you that came out of the group. And you're welcome to share it on the chat, but we'd love you to unmute yourself and just share what it is that you're going to be doing. What's your commitment primarily, I think, and because I think that would be inspiring for people.
Okay, George, I'll take you up on it.
Okay, Martin.
So when I look at the vision and I look at the 10,000 things that are needed to make this world a better place, I think where to start? How can you talk about that? And I shared in a group, I would like to talk about these. I'm a financial advisor and I talk with clients a lot, but I have to shy away for obvious reasons from the political angle. So for the last couple of weeks, I actually came across a story that I now tell all the time to people that I speak with, and this is what it is. In Papua New Guinea, there is a a campaign ongoing. A person who wants independence had been jailed by the Indonesian government. Papua New Guinea is just north of Indonesia. It's a very big country, the size of California, and it's one of the last remaining colonies on the face of the planet. So the person, I'm sorry, I forgot his name now, had been jailed by the Indonesian government, who has no business to be there in the first place, and had been convicted to 27 years in prison, just like Nelson Mandela. Now, guess what? 3 weeks ago, because of what happened to George Floyd, that news reached Papua New Guinea, and it led the Indonesian authorities to let him out next month. And I thought, there's something really good that came out of a terrible situation. So I have now gone to the point, I've shared the story with a bunch of friends and but also clients, because generally people say, oh, it's so big, I can't do anything, we don't have any power. I said, here is a clear example that shows that people can make a difference just by talking about it. That leads to the authorities making some positive changes. And that seems to be working. So there, that's my story.
Beautiful. Thank you, Martin. That's inspiring. Thank you. Lovely to hear. Someone else willing to speak out, and we'd love to hear a commitment if you have one. Otherwise, anything inspiring would be great, or challenging. Questions? Darby.
But this is, yes, no, thank you. I will share with the group as I did in our breakout. My commitment over the next 30 and 100 days is to finish the book with 48 contributors, of which George and his team are one. And it's the voice of a number of global individuals that have incredible knowledge and wisdom around what we're defining, aligning our hearts to the mind, to the wallet, and really making a difference. So I've been committed to that. I've been so overwhelmed by the, thinking and knowledge that's been coming in, and the ability to weave the story from contributor to contributor. So I feel that that's my commitment, and also working with another initiative, also another contributor for the book on Humanity Awareness Initiative, which I spoke in the breakout that I'd love to weave in George and your work and the team of A Golden Civilization. So that's what pumps me up. But I also love Leo's t-shirt. So I hope he talks about the t-shirts he's doing, because I want to get those. Those are great.
Thank you, Darby. Inspiring. Darby really working on an incredible book. Many thought leaders from all over the world in the book on really transforming the organizational culture, I think would be one way of framing it, at least. But Wallet's heart and mind, really putting the three of them to work together. Beautiful. Thank you, Darby. It's been an honor being part of that group. Who else would like to share an inspiring story or anything? And you can feel free to pitch in anytime you want. Kathy, you said you wanted to share something earlier. Do you want to still share?
Sure. So I have been, a friend of mine is part of this group called Women Fired Up 2020, that they started to get lots of women, though any gender can join, to create pods of women or people to work on the campaign together for the next 100 days, though it started a little while ago. So I formed a group. I have 10 women, so there's 11 of us all together. Multi-generational. We have 3 30-year-olds, which is fabulous. And we meet every Friday for an hour and talk about what were our successes and challenges of the work we did. And we all had made commitments the week before to letter writing or postcards or calling or texting. And then we talk about what we're going to do for the next week and make the commitments. And then we just share whatever that we want to share. And it's also been a great kind of supportive forum around what's happening in the world and issues coming up. And one of the things that's been really lovely is, so I've been doing letters and postcards, which I'm continuing to commit to every week, to do a batch of 30 postcards or letters, or is that I'm getting our two 16-year-olds involved. So the three of us do it together, and it's so lovely because it's kind of a mindless activity in a way. And so it's wonderful to bring mindfulness to it. So I just put aside that time and say, I'm going to just be totally focused on the pen and the paper and what I'm saying and connecting with the girls. And it's been, I look forward to it as one of the best, 2 times a week we're getting together and doing it. So anybody that's interested in Women Fired Up, whatever gender you are, let me know. Or we can put the information on the chat. I can do that. So.
What a wonderful way to gather. I mean, to do it as a group and to keep the energy going and the inspiration going. And I know you do group meetings every week. And yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Kathy. Who else?
Richard is George. Richard.
Hi, George. Thank you for having me here today. This is my first visit with you all, and I was invited by Martin. And so I'm here to testify that Martin does indeed tell that tale. He has told it to me. And I would also like to testify to Kathy's description of what she said. She shared that with me also in the breakout session, and it really fired me up. So I thought that was really great. Yeah. I would say that in terms of engagement for the next 3 months, I was sharing with Kathy, we have a friend in Santa Fe who is part of a mutual aid program where she serves as sort of the focal point between people in need and people with resources. And so she puts these two together in order to fill that function in her community. And I think that working on the local level like that is something that really is important to do. And so my wife and I, or I should say I, and perhaps not speak for my wife, but are going to look into that as something to do here in Los Angeles. I think that for the 100 days, of course, counting down to the election, I think that we want to become engaged with the letter writing and postcard writing. And so we're looking, Martin and his wife are doing some of that work. And so we might be feeding off of that as a resource. I think we're already reaching out to to someone who furnishes these postcards, but I really was intrigued by Kathy's idea where she was talking about her little threesome. So Kathy and her 2 daughters doing, they have like a little chain that goes on, and one's writing, one's doing artwork, stamps and things like that. Sounds like a lot of fun, like to get involved in that for the next few months. And I'd say in terms of mindfulness, I guess my biggest issue right now, and as I imagine it is for most of us, is the vortex that we are in right now and all of the different things that we have to deal with in terms of the multiple crises that we have to somehow synthesize and process. And I think that probably the only way to be able to do that is through a mindful approach and to be kind to ourselves and watch what's happening and watch our own emotions as we run through the gamut. And it enables us, I think, certainly enables me to process a little bit about this. I think I was mentioning that I'm very interested in the inner work of racial injustice and to be exploring my own racialization and how that impacts me and how it has formed who I am. We're all victims of this. And so that's my action plan.
Beautiful. Inspiring, Richard. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sounds like you're going to be a busy man these next 90 days. We need you. Great to hear. Thank you. Who else?
I could just briefly share, I'm in Canada, in British Columbia,
Yeah.
Victoria, and I'm a dual citizen.
Oh.
So I spend a lot of time reading the news and keeping track and feeling very grateful to be here. However, I'm going to make sure that I vote. I always do vote, and through Democrats abroad. So I may be helping them to make sure that people like me, of which there are thousands in Canada, that we do vote. And I also have siblings in the States, one of whom's trying to get out the vote in Florida. The other's in California dealing with COVID around close to them, and she gets discouraged. So I view my role as to support her. And then locally, I'm an environmentalist, and so active in trying to do banner waves and pop-up actions to stop the logging of our old growth forests. We have 3% left. And in terms of mindfulness, I've renewed my practice because I do feel that we are facing global collapse. And so I need to draw upon a deeper sense of who we are and, in order to deal with that very scary prospect. Thanks.
Beautiful, inspiring, Terry, really. And thank you for sharing from Canada. And the one thing, we've had a number of stories of people who've sent in votes and they haven't arrived until after the election, the primary elections, and often they sent them in weeks before. So just to encourage you to vote early. Of course, my dad used to joke, vote early and vote often.
Good tip.
Yeah, but thank you so much. Good to know we have your vote coming in. Yeah.
Has more of a charged meaning these days, doesn't it?
It does.
Bill South here. Hey, I wanted to share, sort of on the same line. I have a place in Hawaii. That's where I'm a legal voting resident, and a place in Montana, and I'm involved in elections and working with the Democratic Party in both states to try to make sure that we get some people that care about other people, and of course get those people that are concerned with environmental issues, because that is our number one issue. If we don't take care of the planet and try to renew some of the things we've destroyed, we're not going to be long for this planet. For instance, in Hawaii, I've been working with Jessica Woolley on fighting the overcollection of aquarium fish. They essentially mine the reefs, and essentially could cause, if they kept going at the rates they're going now, could essentially cause the ecosystems there in the ocean to tilt. And we're already at a major point of collapse, and as well as sea level rise. So it's messy there, and here in Montana, trying to make sure that we have adequate habitat for wild animals like wolverines, grizzly, wolves, stuff like that. So it's just a tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot to do.
Yeah. Beautiful, Bill. Inspiring to hear. And we spend a good deal of time, as you probably know, in Hawaii as well. So it's wonderful to have both the mainland and the Hawaii flavor. And Hawaii's really the center of the Pacific. Yeah. Here we go, man. I'm with you. And so keep up the good work. Good to hear that you're connected with politics as well as with just an environmental movement. Inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. We're nearing the end. We might have time for one more before Hugh shares a closing and Laura finishes the session off. Anybody else want to share something? And I will say that Darby, I'm looking forward to. Darby mentioned the possibility of us doing a Golden Civilization conversation with one of the communities coming out of her book. And I'm very excited about that possibility. And I know she'll be talking with Laura about that. So more things happening. All right, well, good to see those of you who didn't speak, those of you that I know, that I don't know, Grace, Joan, Mary, Peggy, thank you for joining us, but you would like to share something to help us move forward.
Thank you, George. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation with you all in our small group. And I feel inspired by what Kathy shared as well. You know, I have a group that I've put together from within the effort that we're doing around Wisconsin, about 100 people who have committed to, to engaging. And it spurred me to think that what I will do is convene that group regularly on Zoom, or whoever wants to come and do something like what we're doing here, say, okay, what are you doing? What can we do? And what can we do together? What can we do individually over the next 100 or so days? As I've been thinking about, well, what to do, it may not be that we need to do a whole lot more around Wisconsin, but there are many, many other efforts, including the kind of letter writing thing. So this has been inspiring to me. So I wanted to thank you, Kathy, and thank everyone, George and everyone, for all the wonderful ideas and thoughts. And so the next couple of months we have kept kind of fairly open. Kyra Jewell will be leading the session next month, and she's been involved in so many things. I mean, if you follow Kyra Jewell, she's teaching courses, in many, many different formats. I mean, they're basically online, but many, many different groupings of people. A lot of work she's doing on racial justice. She's on the Insight Timer app, as I am as well, with a lot of our meditations and talks. And much of her work, in terms of teaching, is around the issues that we're talking about here today, of how to be engaged, particularly around the issue of racial justice. And it was good to see Vice President Biden come out with his plan, really about addressing the fundamental inequality. So, what my hope would be, and is that the next couple of sessions will really be a kind of continuation of today, of really looking closely at what we can do together. And in our different groupings and outside of this, to be as effective as we can in making sure that we have a caring and compassionate government coming out of November, as well as the other issues that are related to all of us in the world around the pandemic and around racial justice and around the environment that folks have talked about. So with that, I would just invite us to finish with a 2 or 3 minute meditation. Just coming back, as George led us earlier on, just coming back into the body, feeling your breath. Just connecting with how at any moment we can come home to ourselves. We can come home to the present moment. We actually have the opportunity to step out of reactivity and judgment and blame and all the ways we create separation from others, separation from ourselves if we get into harsh judgment, and that we can come back to the body, come back to the breath, come back to this moment. It's always available to us. And really it's a simple matter of remembering. And the more we practice, the more we remember. We build that muscle of remembering that we're here, that we can come back when we go off into attachment, into clinging, into aversion, into checking out, separation, spacing out, that we can just come back. We can wake up, come back to this moment. The words of Dorothy Hunt's poem, Peace is this moment without judgment, this moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. Peace is this moment without judgment, this moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. So as we end our time together, just invite you to reflect on your commitments as we go back into our lives, into our work, into the different ways we're engaged in our world. And see if you can touch into your deepest intention, why it's important to you to fulfill as best you can your commitments, connecting with what you care about most deeply. As they say in Zen, the most important thing is to remember the most important thing. So remembering what's most important, coming back, being able to connect back to your commitment to this time together. And may we all engage wisely and compassionately in these coming weeks. May our practice serve the healing of the suffering in our world, and to help us come together to remember that we are one people in this whole world, and including all of the species, all of the beings, all of the sentient beings. And may our practice, may our time together serve the awakening of and the freedom of all beings everywhere. Thank you, George. Thank you, Laura and Natalie, and thank everyone for our time together. We hope to see you next month.
I think Laura has a final say. Thank you so much, Hugh, and great to see you. Great to see all of you. Laura, you want to close us out here?
Sure. So thank you first for being here. And in the next few days, you're going to get a recording as well as the resources that were shared in the chat and were spoken so that you can go back to them. And our next session is going to be on August 26th. It's a Wednesday, at the same time, 12 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. But we welcome everyone from around the world. And so please join us then. And we also will send out a donation link, and we encourage you to make a donation to the teachers so they can keep this type of programming going. And thank you so much for being here. And please reach out with any feedback that you have.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Aloha.
Mahalo. Aloha.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.